Hey everybody, it's Big E. Welcome to Big E's YouTube channel. I'm doing things a little out of order here. I'm working on the C4 Corvette. We're going a little out of order. I was going to do disassembly first, but I'm actually here now. Like I said, I got the lower control arm, the new bushings in, and the new ball joints. And what I should have done is I should have shown how to put that in. Basically, I got it in there and tapped it in with a 5-pound sledgehammer, the persuader, if you will. And I actually pushed it all the way down to get it in there. And you tap it in, and then you use the bolts. The one side is the nut is going to be an 18mm nut on the inside, and the bolt head that's on the outside is going to be a 15mm. So all I did was I put that stuff through the bolt through the nut and tightened it as tight as I can make it, because there's a sleeve in there, metal sleeve that's in the bushing, and you're not going to crush it. That sleeve keeps it from crushing, so you're going to want to make that tight. And I don't know if you can, let me angle this down a little bit so you can see. So even with that tight, okay, and then you're going to want to make sure this spring, I'm going to push this down. I don't know if you can see, but there's a cutout here for the spring to lay in. So when you pull that up, you're going to want that to lay in there, because that spring laying in there is what's going to keep your spring pressure there. So at this point, what I'm going to do is the next step will be, I need to get the piece that goes upon here, that bolts to here. There's a shroud, because that's where the sway bar and that's where the shock mount is for it. So I have to go dig that out, and then I'm hoping I could do that, or I could put the upper control arm on at this point. So I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get the shock mount. We're going to put that on. And then the upper control arm is good to go, so maybe I'll throw that on quick too then right away. So I'm going to go ahead and pause here, and I'll be right back with the materials. All right, so here we go. Now we got that shock mount, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to attach that to a lower control arm. So I always like to keep the bolts inside the piece here, so that way they don't get lost. So we're going to take this piece. Now you have a bolt that's coming out from the control arm itself. So I'm going to go ahead and line this all up. Hey buddy, Levi's here. I'm sure he might make an appearance in a little bit. He's got some very important lawn chores to do, so he's attending to that first. So he's preoccupied while Daddy's doing this. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to go ahead and line this up. Now, unfortunately, I'm in a little bit of a hurry with pending cold weather coming and other things, so at this point, I have to see. What you're going to want is, I believe it's 13mm on here for top and bottom, I believe, if my memory serves me correct. So I'm going to use a breaker bar on the bottom side of that to hold it, and a ratchet obviously top side. Okay, so we're getting there. I was double checking myself. This is where air tools and power tools would be great. There, now it's getting tight, so tighten that down. Same thing for here. tighten that down. And yes, buddy. Whenever you're done, okay? Did you have enough or do you want more?
You want to have a bite?
I'll have a little bit then. Okay? I'll tag along.
Does it taste?
That's really good, buddy. Thank you. My son's sharing me. He got his homework done. So, he's sharing his reward cookie with me.
See?
So, yep. So anyway, we're back to here. I'm going to tighten. I don't know if I can get in there with a breaker bar. Watch the camera, bud. Okay. And this is usually what takes the time, is figuring out how to get to certain bolts during reassembly. So obviously I'm going to have to address that, but I can address that in a little bit. So what I'm going to do now is I need to get the jack, and you're going to jack up under here. Don't under here, because remember, there's a grease zerk under here for the new ball joint. And you don't want to put your jack there and bust off that grease zerk, because now the ball joint will be junk, because there's no lube in here at all, no grease. You want to jack up under here, so that way you don't risk breaking that off, because you just went to the trouble to press that in and rebuild it. You don't want to mess it up by rushing around. So let me grab a jack. I'm going to get a 13 millimeter wrench for that other bolt, and then we're going to go ahead, we're going to tighten that 13 millimeter bolt for the shock mount, and then we're going to jack up the A-arm. We're going to put the sway bar back on, and then hopefully we can get the upper control arm and maybe get the spindle on yet before we run out of daylight. So I'll see you back here in a little bit. Okay, so Big E's back. I don't know if you can see the lights fading, but we got that tightened. It needed a 13 millimeter combination wrench on the back side of that. 13 millimeter ratchet on the outside, we were able to tighten that up. As of right now, you can see we got the jack underneath here. We're trying to line this up. So, hoping I can get it up high enough that we can get the bolt through. So we have the control arm a little too high. So, right. Watch the thing go down all the way. So you have to see even as quick as you. So we're going to take our time. This is a little bit of finesse right here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to try and keep starting to go. Just need a little bit here. Yeah, so I just don't have a pry bar with me. I don't know if this will work or not. It just needs a little bit of persuade. There we go. And then we put the nut on there. Of course. Luckily, it didn't get jammed in there, so eventually we're going to do a video on upgrading these bushings, but I just don't have those bushings for now. And like I said, unfortunately, I'm racing against the weather. So we have that. So we're going to let me see. Watch it be some weird size I don't have, right? Of course, right? No. Okay. So we have part of it. You almost need every wrench you have for this thing. So we have, what is this? 15 millimeter here. Now the question is, what do we have on here? This is a 13. This is an 18. 13's too small. We're probably going to need a 15, so to tighten that up. So once again, guys, sorry, I'm going to have to hit the pause button. I'm going to grab a 15, and I'm going to see about grabbing the spindle. And then that way we're going to put the try and get the upper control arm on and the spindle before we run out of daylight. So I'll be right back. Alright, Biggie, I'm back. I got that 15mm wrench. As you can see, I have the 15mm wrench here. And I got my ratchet here. So we're going to go ahead and tighten that up. There, nice and tight. Okay, so that's tight. We have our shock mounts here. These are tight. Now, what I'm going to do next is we're going to go ahead, we're going to jump onto, let me adjust the camera here for you guys. We're going to jump onto that upper control arm situation we got going on. You can see there's a hole here. Well, no, because the shock mount, but here's a hole here. Okay, so what we're going to do, I have it over here. We have our control arm and we have our mounting bolts. So what you want to do is pay special attention, especially, and I noticed this on the Corvette, is if you look, and it's hard to see, the lighting is terrible, but these spacers, one side of them is flat. The other side, I don't know if you can, they're like machined out, like a divot or something. They're made for the way the bolt's made, okay? So for the way that the control arm is. So you're gonna have, we're gonna put this bolt in here. It's easier said than done, I think. What's funny is it fell out. Now you want to put it in, it doesn't want to cooperate. But these bolts are like carriage bolts, and that they have a shoulder machined onto them. So you want them to lock in to the boss that's in the frame rail there. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to pull everything apart here. We're going to try and get this in here. And I know we're running out of daylight. I'm going as fast as I can. I'm hoping I can get this video done before we're in the dark. So now, what we're going to have is you're going to take these spacers, you're going to put the divot side towards you, okay? Or no, you know what, I lie. Before you put those in, we need to get the shims, which, yep, I left the shims on the workbench. So let me go grab the shims, and we'll be right back. All right, Biggie, I'm back. So I found the shim packs. I zip tie them together, and I label them front and rear. So what I'm going to do here is, let me turn the camera here for you guys. I'm going to go ahead and put that shim pack in here. Now the trick of it is they're U-shaped. So the trick's going to be that they balance there until you get everything together and assembled. So I have the front shim pack. I'm going to cut the zip tie off of that. And then peel that off. So that way we can put the front shims on like that. Now remember, we're tight against the frame here. We're not, okay, so the bolt went through. I know the lighting isn't the best, but I don't know if you can see here. You see the bolt, here's the frame where it comes up where the mount is, and you can see the shim there. Okay, so now that you have the shims there, you can take that spacer. It's hard to see, but the divot, again, put the divot towards you. So what you want to do is, now let me just double check that I'm doing it right. Okay, so the flat side's going to go towards the engine. Let's just call it that. Flat side towards the engine. Okay, that way that's a little easier. Maybe that'll be easier for you to remember. And we got to make sure that those shims stay. I mean, we're still going to need to do an alignment, but the fact that you have the shims the way the car was is going to make it close, that you can drive it to the shop to get the final alignment done. Now, the next will be actually getting the control arm in there is going to be the next trick. And by trick, I mean, yeah, it's going to be one. So, I may have gone too far here. So, I'm going to carefully see if I can back these bolts up without losing shims. Because it's a real tight fit here. Because we have to, you have to somehow get it. It's a tight fit on here. And this is where the frustration lies, is getting it. Well, that didn't plan out too well. They really don't give you a lot of room here from the factory to do this. And I'm trying not to break anything, but I think that ship's sealed. We may get it. We may. It's so close to going. I'm just trying not to knock the shims, because that can be a nightmare if that's off by way too much. So I'm trying to get, I'm having some clearance issues up here with this. Now maybe, see what happened, that the shim flipped over. So it could be an issue now of just, if we can get this to back up like that. So now is the tricky part, because it's, and there goes one shim, and there goes another shim. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and at least get these somewhat on there, and I can still fit the shims in. It's not a lost cause at this point, but they are falling out because, unfortunately, I should have probably done this differently than what I did, but live and learn. Okay, so basically the A-arm is in place. So now what we can do, the shims fell out. It's not the end of the world. At least they're somewhat together. So what you want to do is, now that you see that the bolt is at least holding it in place. So I'm going to drop these shims on that bolt where it belongs, against the frame. So we have 1, 2, 3 shims there. Now I'm taking a look at these. I actually have to move the light, so you have to excuse me, and I'm probably not going to get this done today because we're running out of light. So there's the back piece, there's the other shim for the front, there's a shim here. So that would tell me, okay, so there's that. So that's good. We have all the shims for the front in place. The only one that isn't in place is this one for the rear, which will be momentarily. So now we have all the shims in place. So now what I'm going to try and do is, in one tricky movement, if I can do it, I'm going to try and hold the control arm and the this is really a two-person job, probably, and here I am in the dark trying to do it by myself. So I see one shim did go. Like I said, this is going to be back and forth until you get this. It can be frustrating. Oops. Looks like the front one's good. The back one, I have a shim falling out. My fingers were a little longer, huh? Alright. And now that shim has fallen all the way out and the other one has turned upside down. So we're going to try not to lose any, because it's very important that we have those. So maybe, just maybe, that front one's good to go. This back one, however, is really giving a hard time. So we're going to go ahead and see what we can do here to get this right. Okay, so now I went in. Okay, so now for our next trick, if you will, we're going to put, again, the spacer in with the divot this time of that spacer facing the engine. And then we're going to put, the nut goes on there. And the same thing we're going to do here. We're going to divot towards the engine on that washer, that spacer. And then we're going to put the nut on the end like that. So, unfortunately, guys, I'm going to call it a night. There's no light, really. I'm running out of daylight. Hopefully in the next video I can pick up on putting this spindle on. That would be the next step. We would tighten those nuts and the nuts for the upper control arm, and the next step would be putting the spindle on at that point. But due to the fact that we're running out of daylight, it's dark, and really you're not going to be able to see what I'm doing. I'm going to go ahead and end the video right there and pick up. Hopefully tomorrow we can pick up on getting the spindle back on. Anyway, like and subscribe. That's going to be it for me here, Big E. Watch out for each other. Take care of each other. We'll see you next time here on Big E's.